So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. So every minute that you spend listening to this podcast means a lot to me because I know what you guys are up to. I know what you do, know what you're doing. I know many of you personally, and your days are like my days. They're filled with activities, and the fact that you spend a minute or two with us and listen to this program means a lot to me. So thank you for doing that. If you like what you hear, I hope you do. Today, you're going to definitely like what you hear. But in general, if you like what you hear, send it out to friends and family. We're building an audience, and that's something very critical to both me and most of the guests who come on my show. And today, it is such a pleasure to welcome a beautiful woman on my show. Her name is Kyana Miner. Kyana is a very interesting lady. First of all, she's a mother of 4 kids. We'll start with that. They're 12, 10, 8, and 4. So every even year, she has another kid, it looks like, almost. Not quite. She missed one in there. But she is a content creator, particularly in the family travel space. She has found herself in this little niche where she talks about traveling with children, which is this show is about where kids and culture collide. Well, there's nothing like traveling with children. I've done it, and it's a challenge. But she has a lot of good tips that she's going to share with us today. She's also a blogger. Her blog is entitled Black Adventure blackadventuremom.com. That's where you'll find her blog, and she blogs about 1 time per week. So, Kyana, without any further introduction, welcome to the Hamilton Review.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Bob, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm actually really excited that you have this platform. I think it's super helpful, and I'm just excited to be a part of your show today.
Thank you so much. Well, you know what? Listen, as a pediatrician, I will tell you that I get a lot of questions about a lot of stuff. So by me meeting people like you and just sitting back and listening to their story and listening to what their recommendations are, I learn a lot, and I actually become a better pediatrician for my patients. So that sounds selfish, I know, but that's kind of that is part of the residual value in doing what I'm doing. So, but Kyana, before we get to traveling with kids, tell us a little bit about who you are as a person, your background, where you grew up, a little bit about how you got into doing what you're doing today.
Yes, of course. So as Dr. Bob said, my name is Kyana, and I run the blog blackadventuremom.com. Just to tell you a little bit more about myself, I grew up in Washington, D.C., in a moderate family, not as big as the one that I have, but a family of 5. Both my parents are from Washington, D.C., my grandparents from Washington, D.C., so we're very well-rooted in Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely a city that I love. We're now in Colorado, but Washington is always going to be a part of me, and it's definitely a city that I love. It's interesting though, because one of the things that I love so much now is the outdoors. And that wasn't really something that was super accessible growing up in a metropolitan city. I remember being about 8 or 9 and having a park that I would visit regularly, and I had my favorite tree that I would climb. And I've always really felt connected to nature, connected to walking, connected to like trees and just being outdoors. But again, it wasn't something that I super got into as a child. And hiking just wasn't a family, wasn't super, a family sport. So I was in DC until about 18, and then I went to college at Spelman College in Atlanta. Atlanta is where I met my husband and finished school, really got into corporate marketing. I was an English major, so I just wanted to read Shakespeare all day, Toni Morrison. And went into marketing from there, had really strong writing skills. So I worked for companies like UPS and Coca Cola and some of the big ones down in Atlanta. It was a lot of fun. So met my husband, we got married, we ended up moving to DC for a little while, started having our families, spending time with our own families. And then I got a corporate marketing position in Denver. So we ended up moving to Colorado. And I would say moving to Colorado definitely changed our lives a bit. My husband was in the military, so he kind of started to get the travel bug. I traveled to Ghana and did a lot of traveling across the US, and I started getting the travel bug. And so we knew that we wanted to introduce our kids to lots of adventures, from outdoor activities, hiking, national parks, to traveling out of the country. And I think being in Colorado really sparked that. Colorado is such a state of adventure. And we've just been able to expand just how much we're into, how much hiking and outdoor activities we do, and even jumping on planes here and there to travel the rest of the world. So,
So it was an evolution. So you grew up in
yes.
Washington. You grew up in Washington D.C. Now you do have the
Hmm.
mall. I mean, the mall is
We
gigantic.
do.
I mean, the
Yes.
mall. When I go back to Washington, I'm always astounded by how vast that green space is and how beautiful it is. So Washington D.C.
Hmm. It
does have
is.
outdoor areas, but I understand that it's not exactly what you would. It's not Colorado. That's for darn sure.
Right, right. That is that. And I do love DC. And we do have Rock Creek Park, so there are park systems in DC as well. So,
Sure.
but the mall is great, and even the history there is amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very different than the West. That's for darn sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
The depth of history and all the things that have happened in that little spot in the world is amazing.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
you started having kids. Your oldest is now 12, a girl,
Mhm.
and you're in Colorado, and
Mhm.
you begin to. I mean, you look around, and the mountains of Colorado are beckon, of course,
Yeah,
and
they do. Yeah.
they beguiled you, and so you started taking hikes. So tell us a little bit about the process early on. Did this start 12 years ago when you got back to Colorado, or 10 years ago? When did you start really beginning to uh, actively think about saying we're going to
Mhm.
go on a hike, we're going to go do something, we're going to travel? When did that actually occur?
I'll be honest and say it's kind of been a part of our lives for since we had well, it's been a part of our lives our whole lives, right? So even in Atlanta, we would look for places to go hiking. It wasn't as big of a part as it is now, but I would look for places to take my children. And then I started sharing those places with family and friends. And even in DC, when we were visiting museums and things like that, waterfalls, I would share that with family and friends. But I do think it took off more in Colorado because of the mountains, because of all the open space. And I would say, although I've always loved hiking, COVID was like a huge boost in how much I prioritized it and how much I got the kids outside, because it was really all there was to do.
Yeah,
Everything was, yeah, shutting down and closing down. So it was like I still want to take my kids on adventures. And even though we can't get on planes and fly out right now, what can we do? So we started going to the mountains. Colorado has 4 national parks. And so we started small with like neighborhood parks and state parks. And then we started visiting the national parks as we got more comfortable and as the kids really started to enjoy it and really could take longer walks and longer hikes and wanted to spend more time outside. So it was a slow process. And then as the kids sort of acclimated more to it, we started like going on all day hikes or spending all day in Rocky Mountain National Park. So yeah, it was an adventure.
so it began with hiking. It didn't begin with overnight camping or anything like that.
It did not. No, it definitely for us began with hiking. I actually had never been camping until I went with my family. My husband had only gone camping once with a Boy Scout troop. And so it really started with spending more time outside as a family
Sure.
and not really pushing or rushing ourselves to like look outdoorsy or to do all the outdoorsy stuff at once. I think you really have to start, at your own pace. And it's less stressful as parents as if you do it together and kind of start to notice, okay, what works well for my family. Maybe we start with an hour and then we start to get out for more and more time, and then everyone's asking, okay, we're ready to go camping. So you really want to go at the pace of your own family.
Sure. Absolutely. Let me kind of take a little bit of a sidebar here. You went
Hmm.
To Ghana. Ghana is in West
Yes,
Africa.
yes.
The capital of Ghana is what? Accra?
Accra,
Yeah.
Accra. Yes.
And that was before or after children.
That was before. So that was actually my first trip out of the country.
And what? Why Ghana?
Okay, actually, it was. I've been to Canada and Mexico, but it was my first, like, way out of the continent.
Sure. Yeah.
But Ghana. Actually, I have a friend who's from Ghana, and he said, "Hey, I'm going home, and wanted to see if you wanted to come." So before this, he would say all the time, "Oh, I'm going to go on a trip home. Does anyone want to come?" And I'd be like, "Me, I want to go." And so he let me know that he was going to go home for a visit and wanted to see if I wanted to meet him out there. And I said, "Absolutely." So I had to get a rushed passport and get ready for the trip like within like 3 weeks time. And yeah, went out there and had literally like the most amazing time of my life. So it definitely gave me the travel bug and one just inspired me to want to see more of the world.
So, what was it when you say the travel bug? What was it about Ghana? I mean, I know Western Africa pretty well. I've been there. I've been to Africa
Hmm.
26 times, 27 times, mainly Western Africa, a little bit north of
Hmm.
Ghana, places like Benin and
Hmm.
Liberia, Sierra Leone, places like that. But anyway, I've never been down to Ghana yet.
Okay.
I'll get
Okay.
there. But what was it about Ghana that kind of infected you with this travel
Wow.
bug?
I think it was just how different it was. It was immersing myself in such a different culture than the one that I grew up in. It was seeing the landscape because we backpacked up and down the coast of Ghana. And so we went to like the beaches, we went to the castles, we spent time in the city, and the people were like amazing. If you ever go to Ghana, it's just a very friendly place. The people are incredibly friendly. It was tasting the different foods, hearing all the different languages. I mean, Ghana is an amazing place, but I think it was just the immersion in a different culture and just being able to just feel alive in all of the different ways that I was able to experience the culture. I remember there was this one experience where we were driving to this resort because we wanted to do a safari. And we were driving at night and we had to drive like this 3 hour bumpy road in a taxi in order to get to the resort we wanted to stay at. And we, you know, take this 3 hour trip and we end up at the resort. And the resort is completely full. And we called beforehand and they didn't take reservations, but they were like, "Oh, we have plenty of space." But then a bus full of people got there like maybe 15 minutes before us. So the resort was like completely booked. And so we're terrified. We're like in the middle of nowhere. And we're like, "Where are we going to stay?" So the taxi driver is like, "Well, my friend has, a place down the road. So you can stay there." And we were like, "Okay, sure." And it wasn't a resort and it didn't look like, what we were used to as far as a hotel was concerned. But we got there, we unpacked our stuff, and we're like, we'll just, make the best of it. And so they cooked us dinner by the fireside. And I remember as the sunset, like the sunset was incredibly beautiful. But then when it set, because we were in the middle of nowhere, like I looked up at the sky, and I'm definitely a city girl, being from Washington, D.C., spending so much time in Atlanta. And I looked up at this sky in the middle of nowhere, and it was just like absolutely magnificent. Like I
Yeah.
was like, this is just one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. There was no light pollution. I mean, it was just the pure sky, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And it touched me because this wasn't the place we were going. We were going to the big resort down the street, but the people, their kindness, the food, the fireside, their stories, the sky, it was
Wow.
beautiful, and
Wow.
it really touched me.
It
So
was meant to be,
yeah, yeah,
sometimes plan B is the better
right,
plan, right? And
yeah, yeah,
I'm sure that when you were kind of going up there, you were looking forward to being in a nice hotel and all that kind of stuff.
right, right. All the comforts, all
all
the
of
comfort.
that, but
Yeah.
then you probably got, Kiana, a more authentic African experience
It
in that
very much
short
was.
time than you would have
Mhm.
gotten by doing what you were planning on doing. So that's fascinating. And you saw the Milky Way, you saw the glory of the universe,
It was.
right?
It
And
was. Yeah. Yeah. For
yeah,
sure, it was gorgeous.
I think all of us city folk, when we get out of town and we look up and kind of go, whoa, well, you get more of
Right.
that in Colorado, certainly, than we do in Los
Mhm.
Angeles. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Well, okay. Okay. So you started hiking. We're back in U.S. by the way now, friends.
Mhm.
You started hiking. You have had a slew of kids here, but
Yeah.
you had this desire to travel. Now, is this, let me ask you a question. Is this for them? Are you
Mhm.
saying we want our children to experience the world and life outside and just to know for their education that is the reason we do what we do? Is that obviously that's part of it, right? Is that part of it, or
Mhm.
are you just doing because you yourself and your husband are travelers? Tell us
So
about
I
the motivation behind all this.
For sure, Dr. Bob. So I think it's dual. So I do think that there's two things happening. And I feel like one of them absolutely is we want our kids to see the world. We feel like it's a great education. It helps them understand the world, understand different cultures. It helps build acceptance for people who are different than you. So I think that's really, really important. And that's part of the reason. But my husband and I love to travel and we love to experience different places and different cultures and all that comes with that. And we want to share that love with our kids. And I think it's really important when you have children. It was funny when I was pregnant with my first daughter. I had this conversation with a friend, and she was like, "Well, I guess you're not going to be able to do all the traveling anymore." And I thought, why wouldn't I? We'll just take out, we'll just, at that time, it was one child, we'll just take our daughter with us. And she was like, but that's not going to be fun. And, there are places kids can't go. And again, I remember explaining to her, well, if kids live there, for sure kids can visit. And I'm not sure I know a country yet where there are not children residing there. And so I think we have this idea that when we have kids, it's time to create a life that's centered just on our children. And
Yeah.
I think it's unfair to us as parents and it's unfair to the kids because I think it's really important for us to share our passions and share our joys with the children. So that's the other side of why we travel because we both love it and we want to share that passion with them.
I think you're right. And I think that traveling, for me personally, I know that traveling opens up my mind. I learn so much every time I
Hmm.
go, anywhere I go, even locally. If I go to a new place, I find that I am fascinated by it, and there is a certain amount of education that you just by being there in that spot,
Hmm.
an awareness and a sense of what of that place, whether it be in America
Hmm.
or be in other parts of the world as well. And as the days go by, you're going to probably be doing more international traveling. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, going back to you sound like as a kid you did not travel that much as a kid. Is that true or not true?
So, I think we did travel, not as much as I travel now, but when I was a child, my parents kind of had that same desire to travel more and to share that with us. And so we went to Canada and they took us to Orlando, Florida. We also went to the Caribbean and we did some cruises. And so I think they traveled the first time my parents have ever been on the plane, they were with us. And so I think they kind of got the ball rolling, right? Like they wanted to travel. My grandmother, either of my grandmothers have never been on a plane. And so it was something that they started to open up for us. And I think it was really amazing kind of seeing them break through their fears and take us traveling. And so we did take, trips and it's something that I'm really building on with my kids.
Sure.
So it's really exciting to be able to do that. Yeah.
So, the biggest, of course, the question a lot of people have who have children. Now, you have four, which is a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
it is a lot. And how, can you give us some tips about traveling with children? Okay, so your friend who kind of splashed cold water on you when you were having
Right.
your baby, she was correct. She was right. There are
Yeah.
places, having kids, traveling with kids is a little different than taking a vacation
Yeah.
with your husband by yourself. Okay, let's be honest.
Yeah. For
But
sure. For sure.
but the joys of travel and you can
Hmm.
figure out ways of making it fun. And I actually
Right.
listen. I happen to agree with you completely, Kiana. I wrote a book, and one of my things in my book is travel. Travel far and wide with definitely with your newborn because it's a great time to travel
Hmm.
because they travel beautifully,
Right.
really. But
Hmm. They do.
my
Yeah.
my word is, when you have a kid, you put that kid in your back pocket and take them wherever you go. And yes, you have
Hmm.
to accommodate to having a baby in the home, but also and this sounds a little bit kind of odd for maybe some people, but they have to accommodate to you too. They have to accommodate
Hmm.
to your life, what you're doing, what
Right.
you're up to, the fact that you go to the grocery store, the fact you go here and there, that you have, commitments to different things. They have got to also learn how to live in your space as well.
Hmm.
So I have no problems making that demand, if you will, on the child. But give us some tips about traveling with children.
Yeah, so yes, I think there is a reality that, of course, traveling with children is different than traveling solo or traveling as a couple. But it still very much can be a fun experience. And I think if you're ready and you're prepared, it makes it all the better. So some of my tips for traveling with children is snacks.
Is what?
Lots and
Is
lots of snacks,
Oh,
lots and lots of snacks. No,
yeah, right.
I would I would say it's really making sure that everyone's needs are met before a trip, during a trip, and then after a trip. And so I would say that this applies if you're just having a local adventure, or even if you're getting on an airplane, or you're flying out, you're going somewhere, or you're taking a road trip. You want to really think through, okay, what do my kids need? And I was joking about snacks, but I was actually also very serious. Making sure that, especially if you have young children, that they're fed, because that can, there's going to be a lot of changes when you're on an adventure, and sometimes change can be hard for kids. But I think when they are emotionally calm, when they're well fed, when their needs have been met, it's a lot easier to navigate through different experiences and lots of changes. I think when children are younger, also like naps and making sure they're not tired and they've had plenty of rest is also an important step. But even as adults, like making sure that our needs are met, making sure that we're not hungry and we're not super tired. And I think a great way to do that is as you're planning your itinerary, you don't plan it as if you're taking a solo trip or an adults only trip. You leave space,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes.
you leave space. Yeah, you leave space, and you never know what's going to go in that space. It might be a nap. It might be. I remember one time we were in Paris, and I had this idea that we were going to spend all day at the Louvre, and it was just my first time there, and I was super excited. But I had a 10-month-old, I want to say a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And so, needless to say, we didn't spend all day at the Louvre, and we ended up having to leave and spend some time at the park. And we had to spend 2 hours at the park. And after that 2 hours, my kids, their attitudes and their demeanors were amazing, but they just wanted to get outside for a little bit. And so, making sure that their needs are met, making sure your needs are met, and when a meltdown happens, not saying, oh, we shouldn't have taken the trip or overreacting, really trying to be in a space of calm and say, I wonder if there's a need either for me, for my husband, or for the kids that's not being met right now. And I wonder if we can pause our itinerary and meet that need and then get back to it. And then I would say the other part that kind of really goes with that is being very flexible. It's okay to plan things, it's okay to book tickets, but looking for sort of that space and flexibility in your plans and being just having that mindset of going in that I'm going to be flexible to, what people need in the moment.
Sure. I think
Yeah.
one of the things, and listen, we've traveled, we have 6 children, as
Hmm.
I think you know. Uh,
6. Wow.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I did.
Okay. Uh,
No, that's amazing.
so, I think the word is pace yourself. And,
Hmm.
being all day in the Louvre with 3 children, I mean, I have, that's very, very aggressive planning in my
Right.
mind. But I think that it's important that you realize what kids like. They definitely like to be
Hmm.
outside. I mean, kids
For
don't generally
sure.
like to be inside no matter what they're doing, forever.
Hmm.
And you got to make sure that attend to that what you
Hmm.
anticipate. Do you have like a
Hmm.
limit of how long you like, for example, you have like a 4 hour limit of how long you like, for example, in a car? Or do you do that kind of thinking?
So we take a lot of road trips.
Yeah.
And one thing I was going to say about the museum is that wasn't a great plan. No, not at all. But I do think it's important to be okay with like stretching your kids. So don't be afraid to actually take them to the museum. But all day is probably not a good idea. But some exposure is good, and this kind of goes into my answer about the car as well. So my kids are actually really excellent road trippers, but we road trip a lot. And so I would say if they're sleeping, we could go, a few hours. But if they're awake, then usually about 3 hours, we'll make a stop and let
Yeah.
them stretch their legs. Yeah. And then some of my children are getting older, like the 10 and 12-year-olds are absolutely fine. My 4-year-old will get a little antsy, so we let her, get out and stretch her legs. But there are even times where she could go a 6 hours and not complain now. And
Sure.
so I do think it's important to, especially if travel and adventure is super important to you, to try to build their tolerance. Do it slowly, but given a little extra time and doing things that might seem like, okay, wow, a child wouldn't want to do this. Like spending time at a museum. My kids can go to a concert, they can go to a ballet and sit and watch it and really enjoy it, mostly because we've kind of built their tolerance for that. So I would say if you're new to like road tripping with kids, plan to stop like maybe every hour and a half to 2 hours. But if it's something, as you build their tolerance, you wouldn't have to stop as often.
My older son and his wife did a major road trip across the country from
Hmm.
California to Indiana. And they came up
Ooh.
with something kind of novel. They actually looked ahead and they
Hmm.
found the
Hmm.
public pool, every public pool
Oh,
in the little communities that they were in. So they would stop
that's
and they
really
would,
cool.
say, "Okay, jump in the
Hmm.
pool," and the kids would go out there. And of
Yeah.
course, there's nothing like swimming to wear you down. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
good
for
a good way to
sure.
get a lot of energy out, right? And
Yeah,
it
for
really
sure.
was. I go that was such a clever idea to
Mhm.
anticipate that and do that. And they actually, I mean, I think they were, with doing that. Now their kids were a little tiny
Mhm.
bit older than your children, but they
Right,
were able
right.
to really get a lot of miles
Mhm.
under, per day under their
Mhm.
belt. Do you
Yeah.
typically, when you do travel, do you usually go to a destination and stay there? So, for example, if you're going to be gone
Mhm.
for a week or so, do you like travel to a spot, stay there for 4 or 5 days, or are you like
Mhm.
itinerant, travelers where you go day one, day two, you kind of keep moving? How does that usually work?
Yeah.
How does that work for you?
So it depends. Like if we do a road trip, then we like to do like a lot of different stops, and we usually have an itinerary that we put together beforehand. And we're flexible because sometimes we'll see something or someone will say, "Have you ever been here?" And we'll we'll add that to the trip. And so when we road trip, we like to stop a lot because it also makes it feel like we're not just driving straight through, but the kids kind of get to stop, explore place, and then we jump back in the car and go. When we fly, we actually really like to immerse ourselves in one place. So we don't tend to hop around a whole lot outside of that place. Like when we went to Paris, we in my mind or in the itinerary, we were going to take a train to London and we're going to do all these things. But we actually really enjoyed being in Paris and wanted to kind of soak in all that it had.
Sure.
The same thing when we went to Costa Rica, like we really wanted to enjoy the time. And I think part of that is traveling with children. It allows us to like explore the local parks and the local museums and, do a lot of different activities, but then also not feel like we have to cram a whole lot in.
Yeah.
So,
But you
yeah,
you go to one spot, like
one
one
spot,
place,
right.
done. You're not, and you unpack and you're there, and you can
Oh,
have.
as far as hotel,
Yeah,
like
you're not
where
changing
we're staying.
hotels every night,
Oh,
are you?
oh, so we do tend to move around because we want to explore different parts of a city or a place. And so we will get a hotel for usually though we do like to stay for like maybe 3 or 4 nights in one place.
Okay.
We don't like to hop every single night because once the kids are kind of settled, it's a whole nother process to get them settled into another space. There's been times where we've rented an Airbnb for a month at a time if we knew for sure that we were going to be in that place the entire month. Because the longer you can stay in one place, I think, especially with children, the better because then they really start to get comfortable in that place and you don't have to reacclimate them every time you pack everything up and move. And as you can imagine, with 4 kids, 8 shoes, 8 socks, like it gets kind of hectic. So that can get a little hectic.
Yeah.
So
Do you travel with a washing machine and dryer? Is that part of
right,
your
that
luggage?
right. Would be amazing.
Yeah.
But we actually do look for comforts like that in places that we stay because we know we're going to need to wash clothes. And so the hotels we stay at, we look to see if they have a laundry service. Airbnbs are amazing for that reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So your kids are getting older. They're getting to the point
They
where they
are.
probably have a comment or two about where you go and
Mhm.
what they want to do. How much input do they give you, and how much do you receive from them?
Yeah, so my younger children are like very go with the flow. They don't usually give a lot of input, but I know their needs very, very well. So I kind of know what they enjoy. My son needs water, so there needs to be a pool or an ocean. My daughter likes the playground. My older 2 kids definitely verbalize. I'll tell them, and they're not very much on social media, but a little bit. They'll get on YouTube and TikTok, and so I'll tell them the city or the place that we're going, and they always have suggestions. My daughter actually, because she's starting to get that travel bug and really love it too, she has saved places that she wants to visit. So recently, when we came to California, she had saved places. So there was like this cotton candy shop that made these like beautiful. You might know it. I want to say it was in Huntington Beach. They made these beautiful like cotton candy characters, so like different cartoon characters made out of cotton candy. And she was like, I've been wanting to go here for 2 years. And I'm so glad that we're finally going to be able to go. And it gets really exciting. She's 12 and she's going into the teen years. So it gets really exciting at that age because teenagers don't always want to hang out with their parents and travel with their parents.
Sure.
But when she gets to mark things off of her bucket list, it really engages her into the family trip again. So it's really great to get that feedback.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do they miss their friends when you're traveling? Because you it sound no. Well, let me ask you. Let me back up. How much of the year do you travel? I mean, your kids are in school. Obviously,
That's a
during the
great
school,
question.
you're kind of a little bit your wings are clipped. But what about?
Mhm.
It sounds like summertime. You devote some serious time away.
Yeah.
Tell me. Can you give me an idea of how much you travel actually during the year?
Yeah. So I actually, as we were planning 2024 travel, I looked at this previous year and we actually took 22 trips this year. So we do anytime the kids are out of school, the summer we go for it. Our kids are in a private school, so their schedules um, a little bit more flexible than like if they were in public school. So they actually get a pretty long winter break and then they get a pretty long summer break. And with like, days off in between. So yeah, we took 22 trips this year.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So we travel quite a bit.
That's amazing. That's a lot of trips.
Yeah.
Do your children, your older children, in any way resent? I mean, are they able to participate in sports teams and things like that? Is that something that they simply have to uh, forego because of all the traveling you're doing?
No. No, so they, when they ask to participate in anything organized, then we accommodate their request. So my daughter did do gymnastics for a portion of the year, and we just accommodate her gymnastics. My older son isn't really into organized sports as much, so there's nothing that that
Yeah.
he's requested thus far anyway. That could change as he gets older.
Yeah. No, that
But
probably.
they do take music lessons. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And things like that. But some of those can be virtual. So we did do music lessons this year. And when we were traveling, they just went to virtual. So no, I don't ask them to sacrifice any of their desires for the
So,
travel.
so what do they play? What musical instruments do they play?
So my son he did the ukulele, and then my daughter is on piano.
On piano. So you can actually bring a keyboard with you if you're on a road trip.
Yeah,
So
for
you can
sure.
still practice.
Hmm.
And ukuleles aren't that big. You can definitely bring a ukulele and find a place for it in the van or wherever you however you guys
Yeah, yeah,
travel.
for sure.
Um,
For sure.
so I'm watching our time here. I want to make sure that I ask a couple of questions, very important ones.
Okay.
In terms of the best places that you have been and your recommendations, okay, you have people listening to you today who you're tweaking them. You're causing them to think, and they're kind of going, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could have some travel experiences and adventures.
Hmm.
Can you give us some clues on where they should go?
Yeah, so one thing that I always recommend are national parks. I think they're a great place to really start to adventure and travel. A lot of the adventure is outdoors, so there's not a lot of, there's not as much stress or having to, chase kids around indoor spaces. Kids get to be free. There are hiking trails, waterfalls, all kinds of things and adventures in sort of this enclosed outdoor space,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So I always encourage people to like explore the ones nearby so that, that can be a staycation or an easier trip to take. And then start to think about ones a little further away. The first one that we went to as a family was Yosemite, and it was like amazing and such a fun adventure. So I do recommend, exploring the national parks.
Yeah, no, you chose well. Yosemite has got to be one of the most beautiful places
Yeah.
on God's green earth. That's for sure. So Yosemite.
Hmm.
Okay, so other cool places that you think that
Yeah.
family keep going. Give me a couple more.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Okay, so yeah, Yosemite, and let me just also say we visited Montana, and so we visited Glacier National Park, and that one's another really beautiful one, something for the whole family to really enjoy. So that's my national park spiel. I would say to start to think about, and this doesn't have to be something that you put on your short term list, but start to think about a place out of the country that you'd like to visit. I think a great place to start there would be a place like Costa Rica or even one of the islands, in the Caribbean, like the Bahamas or St. Thomas, because again, there's a huge outdoor culture where you can spend time at the beach and really let your kids enjoy the outdoors. And then there are also cultural experiences that they can have. And a lot of those cultures are so different than our own. So
Sure. Yeah,
those are some of my other recommendations. Yeah.
it's great. Yeah, no, Costa Rica. We have been to Costa Rica, and it is becoming ecological kind of destination for a lot of people. There's a lot of cool jungle adventures that you can
There,
do.
there's a lot.
White watering, that kind of stuff. So that's a great recommendation.
Hmm.
So listen, I'm watching our time here. We're gonna wrap it up here, but I want, first of all, I want people to be able to find you, Kyana. You are 22 trips in 1 year. You're into this, my dear. This is you're really you're a person of action here. So tell us remind everyone where people can find you out there. I know your blog again is entitled what?
Blackadventuremom.com. And so that if you go there, that's sort of centrally where I put everything so you can connect to my social medias. But I'm also on Instagram as Black Adventure Mom. So I share reels almost daily of our different adventures or the different places that we go. And yeah, you can find me on YouTube and TikTok as Black Adventure Mom as well.
Any travel tips for making this affordable? How do you find good deals out there?
Oh gosh, yes. I love to search Google for good deals. Skyscanner is great for flight deals. Road trips are great to keep things inexpensive. So it doesn't have to be expensive. If money is an issue, staycations or even exploring the states near you or that surround you is a great idea too. I recently read a stat that said 1 in 4 Americans have never been outside their home state. So even just going to the state next door can be like an amazing adventure, So it doesn't have to be expensive to travel.
Wow.
But yes,
Wow.
Skyscanner and Google are like great resources for travel deals.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, friends, this has been a great conversation with Kyana Miner. She is a content creator in the family travel space. Her blog, again, is called blackadventuremom.com. Go on it. First of all, she's a lovely lady to look at. I can tell you that. I've been looking at her for the last hour, but she's got great ideas. And first of all, I love the idea of people getting out of their house, discovering this beautiful world that we live in. And also you get off the screens, right? Your kids don't have
Hmm.
they're walking around, they're looking around, they're not spending as much time looking at
They're
these
touching things in the real world.
touching
Yeah.
things in the real world. How about that? Start with that as being a great idea. So this is something I
Yeah.
totally, completely endorse. I love it. And Kyana, I love the fact that you're doing this, and thank you for your leadership and your knowledge. So this has been wonderful. So thanks for being part of our conversation today, Kyana.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
And so, friends, you have been tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. We've had a great conversation with Kyana Miller. Check her out. She's got a lot to share. And friends, until next time, stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.